Note, for time constraint purposes and overall video length purposes, certain portions of this video have been sped up in order to save time.
What is happening, boys and girls? Jim here. Hopefully you know the channel name by now, and in case you haven't read the video title, today's little project, trying to make the legendary tipper truck a little bit more off-road friendly. For anyone who owns one of these vehicles, you already know that it's stuck in their own shadows, especially when they're empty. When they're empty, they go nowhere, and that is mainly due to a block of steel weights that they have right here over top of the front wheels. 4 steel bars, similar to this one right here, hanging right over top of the front wheels. So when the truck is empty, all the weight's on the front end, the front tires plow, rear tires spin like mad. So we're also going to be working on a little bit of weight distribution to the vehicle today as well. Adding a little bit of weight inside our false side saddle gas tank and on the air tanks on the other side, just to get the weight a little bit closer to the back wheels. We're not going to mess with the weight up front. We're going to leave that right where it's at. We're just going to add a little bit more weight back here. That way we can get more traction to the back tires. Now you'll have to forgive me on this one. I already started working on this project. I was doing this stuff off camera. I wasn't planning on doing a video on it. And then I decided after the fact to do a video for you guys about it. So we'll go ahead and cover all the bases that I already covered. I still have more stuff to do on the truck, so I do have to take the truck back apart again to show you all that stuff. And we'll go through step by step, screw by screw, and let you know what all we have to do in order to make this thing more off-road capable. So I already got started on the project. I started trimming the front fenders, the back half of the front fender, trying to make that even with the bottom of the chassis. I want the chassis of the vehicle to be at the lowest point on the vehicle. So trimmed off that little bit of hangover on the back edge of the front fender, trimmed off our front step, did a little bit of grinding and sanding on the front air dam portion under here. So this is all nice and smooth. Came in with a drum sander and sanded out the inside of the wheel well. That way we could accommodate larger tires. Same thing on the back. Had the chassis all separated. Well, I'll show you how to do that. Had the chassis all separated and sanded down the inside of the rear fenders, trying to make this a little bit thinner so we can accommodate these tires. You could eliminate the fenders altogether, but you can't eliminate this portion back here because our support bracket that holds up the linkage for the tailgate is mounted right back here. So eliminating the rear fenders isn't necessarily an option. Coming in with that drum sander and thinning things out so that we can clear these tires is a much better option. Take a look at what we've done so far. Once again, trim the back half of our front fenders down, trying to make them flat with the chassis. Remove that step on the front, trying to make that flat with the chassis. Looking at our front air dam, it did have a couple little plastic nubs that these screws were sitting up on top of. So I removed the screws, removed the air dam, put this on the drum sander, sanded those down flat. Once again, trying to get as much ground clearance as we possibly can. Now you'll notice that there is a little ridge right back here. We can sand that a little bit flatter if we wanted to, but right now that's even with the air dam, so we're not losing anything right here. No worries about scraping on anything, so I just basically left that the way it is. As far as our front steps go, our front steps from right here, I did cut those off completely with a pair of wire cutters, but I'm saving those, because we can come in after the fact and just do a little reshaping on the sander, reinsert them, and glue them back into place, and we'll have our front steps back. Once again, front wheel well, came in here with a drum sander with the tire off the vehicle, sanded all this stuff down just to give us a little bit more clearance for these tires, but it's not quite enough. The tires are biting when we turn from left to right. So I still have to come in here, remove the body, and take out the inner fender, which is right here. So we need to come in here and eliminate the inner fender. We're going to leave this outer fender intact, and just start eliminating that inner fender. That way it gives us a little bit more room for turning. Flipping the truck over, looking at the bottom on our steering knuckles. These little pins for the steering knuckle were protruding out through the bottom of the chassis by about 1/4 of an inch. That's another snag point right there. And it kind of looks like a plus sign on these guys if you can catch it on camera. So I came in with a pair of wire cutters, snipped out one corner, snipped out the other corner, snipped out the other corner, came in from the front, snipped that out, and then snipped the whole thing off after that. Didn't want to just go ahead and snip the whole thing off because the plastic is kind of cheap. You might end up shattering that steering knuckle. So we don't want to do that. So just took it piece by piece by piece, and then cut off the middle, and then put it on that sanding drum and sanded it flat. So they are nice and flat with the bottom of the chassis. No snag points there. Looking at the back end, trying to accommodate these larger tires. Came in with that drum sander once again and just sanded the whole underside of this rear fender all the way around and all the way up to the front, trying to make that as thin as possible so that we can accommodate these tires without worrying about rubbing. Tires. What kind of tires are these, do you ask? Well, you know, they're the stock tires in all reality. I just used my WPL B16 tires and stretched them out over top of the stock tires and put them on there like a retread. And it's a pretty tight fit. So there's really no worries about our stock tires spinning inside of these other tires. I might come in here after the fact and glue our sidewall down. Right now this is just in testing phase. But I might come in here and glue our sidewall down to the surface of our main tire. That way we don't have to worry about dirt and debris and stuff getting in here and creating lumps inside our tire. Back tires are pretty wide for these WPL tires to stretch over top of. So it's a real tight fit here on the back tires. Front tires, on the other hand, are just the right width for these WPL tires. They fit on here like a dream. What is a WPL B16? For those who do not know, this is a WPL B16. You can find these everywhere online. Just Google WPL B16 and they'll pop up. This was $50. I paid less than $50 US delivered for this truck, ready to run. Now, you don't have to buy one of these vehicles in order to get the tires. If you're looking for a set of tires, once again, Google WPL B16 tires. You'll come up with a gigantic selection of tires that are available for it. Don't quote me on prices, but I want to say that you can get 6 of these tires for right around $12 US. So not a huge investment for making your legendary tipper truck or a Huina tipper truck a little bit more off-road capable. As far as our mods go and things of that nature, making this thing, once again, more off-road capable, everything that we're doing to the legendary tipper truck, we can also apply to the Huina 1582 or the other Huina tipper truck. Everything that we're doing to this one, we can do to this truck. Yes, this truck has a metal cab and a metal tipper box, but the areas that we're working on, front fenders, rear rear fenders, gas tanks, the little tabs on the bottom of the steering knuckles, that is all the same on the Huina vehicle. And this stuff is all plastic on the Huina vehicle. All these lower portions are plastic, so no worries. Everything we're doing to this, you can do to those as well. Let's take a look at the Huina truck just for instance so we can see what the Legendary looked like beforehand and afterwards. Looking at our front fenders, we can see that they are hanging down quite a bit right there. So that is a good snag point. Once again, we sawed those right off of there. Looking at our inner fender, I already came in and removed a bunch of plastic off of the Legendary, but this is what it looks like normally. Looking at our front step, seeing how far they hang down over here on the side, you can see that that front step is hanging down by quite a bit. Once again, just chop that off with a pair of wire cutters and then sanded it flat. And here are the two plastic tabs that are on the air dam. Once again, that was sticking up a little bit, and I removed the screws, removed the air dam, and sanded those down flat. Looking at our steering knuckle pins right down here, trying to get an angle so we can see how far these guys are hanging down. Yeah, they're hanging down by about 1/4 of an inch right there, or maybe a little bit more than 1/4 of an inch. You can obviously see that plus sign that we got going on right here, so I came in once again with a pair of wire cutters and just snipped it here, snipped it on the back edge, snipped it on the front edge, and then came through and chopped it right through the middle, and then sanded it flat. That way we weren't going to run the risk of breaking or damaging that little post coming off of the bottom of the knuckle. Looking at the back half of the truck, looking at that rear fender, we can't tell on camera, but the edge of the fender right here hangs down by about 1/16 of an inch, maybe a little bit less, and that's where I came in with a drum sander and just sanded all that flat, trying to make it as smooth as possible, once again, so we can accommodate the larger tires.
All right, before we get started working on a truck, let's talk about disclaimers and things of that nature. Whenever it comes to working on your vehicle, doing modifications to your own personal RC vehicle, whenever you decide to modify your personal RC vehicle, that is your responsibility. If you mess up somewhere down the line and break something or damage something, that is your responsibility. If you're watching a YouTube video, such as this video or somebody else's video, and you see somebody modifying their vehicle, and you decide to copy them, which there's nothing wrong with, but if you decide to copy them, and you damage something or break something or mess up somewhere down the line, that is your responsibility. It's not the person who's doing the video's responsibility. They didn't tell you to work on your truck. You decided to work on your truck. So if you mess up somewhere down the line, that is your fault. You're taking responsibility for your own actions, once again.
Alright, first thing we're going to do is key on the vehicle and raise our box up. Now, you don't have to raise it up all the way. You might want to just leave a little bit of slop on your cylinder. That way when we reattach things, it'll be easier to get everything fastened back down. We want it just up high enough that our prop rods are almost fully extended. That way when we're reassembling things, these will be sticking up far enough that we'll be able to fish them through the chassis and reattach them without any issues. So right here is just about good. We can get our Phillips screwdriver in on either side to remove our false cylinder. We can get a screwdriver in on either side to remove our prop rods, as well as removing our mount back here for the bed itself. And we also need to remove this rod right here on either side to disconnect our tailgate linkage. Getting our battery disconnected. Don't need to leave that in there. Might as well leave your battery cover off, because we're going to have to come in here and remove 2 Phillips screws from the inside, this guy right here and this guy right here, when it comes to separating our chassis. But we'll come to that here in a minute. So go ahead and just leave your battery cover off for the moment. Putting our battery off to the side, putting our battery cover off to the side. First thing we're going to do is remove this screw right here and the one on the other side. That way we can disconnect our linkage from the tailgate. There's one screw removed. Set that inside our magnetic tool tray. Our linkage has been successfully removed. At this point in time, I'm going to go ahead and remove our 2 Phillips screws, which are holding our false cylinder in place. Just so we can get this disconnected and out of the way. We've got that disconnected. Next step, removing our lift points right down here. That screw has a long shank on it, long smooth shank with the thread on the very end. The screws for our lift posts and for the hinges are basically the exact same, so no worries about getting those guys confused. And we've got those guys disconnected. So we'll go ahead here and remove the hinge screws at the back. And there we go. We've got all those removed, and we can take the bed off the truck. Our truck has been stripped down. Here are the lift rods for raising and lowering the bed. There's a little electric motor in there with a big wheel on it that spins around, and the rods are mounted on one end of the wheel. As the wheel drops down, the bed lowers. As the wheel comes back up, the bed raises. And that is how that works. And we'll get a good view on that once we get this all separated. Next thing we're going to work on is removing the cab off of the vehicle. Just getting the cab, upper cab portion removed off of it. You can do it without taking the tires off. It's a lot easier taking the tires off. Removing the tires. How to get rid of that center cap that's on the center of the tires. There is a little cap that sits right in here and blocks the screw. Here's what one of those looks like. Get our camera to focus in on it without blinding us. Sorry about the light on the camera. I had to turn that up a little bit so we could get rid of our shadows.
Mental note, we need to save every single one of these little center caps. We're going to be using these for wheel back spacers later on in the video, just to get the proper amount of back spacing for all the wheels. So we need to save all 6 of these caps if we can. I recommend using the drill bit method for removing them. Start out with a 1/16 drill bit, work your way up to a 7/64 drill bit, and then try to pry the cap out from the inside out. That way we can maintain the cap as best we can.
Little plastic cap right there. Basically I used a scratch awl or a small pick and then just kind of slowly tapped it in here on the side in between this outer ring and that cap. Use a small hammer to drive it in there, and then just pop that little cap right out of there. And that causes some damage to your wheels. Or can cause some damage to your wheels. You see we got these little dots on our wheels. Right there. That's a bit of a bummer. What you could do as an alternative to using the pick and coming in from the side like that, hindsight's 20/20. What you could do is use a small drill bit, a very small drill bit, and just drill right through the center of this cap. Just drill right through the center of the cap. Don't go too far. You don't want to get into the screw on the back edge, but just enough that you can make a hole in the cap and then put something on the inside of it and pop it out versus coming in from the side like that. Coming in from the side, once again, you're going to damage your wheel in the process. If you drilled a hole through the cap first and then just kind of took that pick right through the center of the cap and popped it out, you'd be much better off. So we need to remove the tires off the vehicle. All the screws that are holding the tires in are a bit longer than the rest of the screws on the vehicle. Such as this guy right here. A little bit longer. So we're going to put that guy off to the side as well. And that is the sound of a tree falling down. So here's a look at our retread tire. Once again, WPL B16 tire stretched over top of our stock tire. Just to cover the bases on how I stretched that over the top of the tire, I basically had the tire off the truck sitting like this. I had our B16 tire in my hand, and I put my hands on either side of the bead right here, put my fingers inside and opened it up, stretched it open, and shoved it down over top of our stock tire, and then just kind of negotiated it around until I had it in a position. And that's kind of tough to do. You're definitely going to get some hangnails in the process. You're probably going to get some bloody cuticles in the process, so be forewarned about that nonsense. Now you'll notice I have a small washer right here on the inside on our little spindle. That is to backspace our tire away from this post right here. Without that, the tire's going to rub on the post and the truck's not going to go anywhere. So you're going to need to find a small washer, such as this, after we're finished, to put back on here to keep that tire from rubbing on that post. Now you have to be careful about your washer size. It needs to be just big enough to slide over this post, but not too big that it slides past the post. If it slides past the post, it's going to end up hitting on our steering linkage. And once again, the truck's going to come to a full stop. So you need to have that washer stop right here at the end of the hex. You don't want it to go past that hex. So it needs to be just the right size to sit on the edge of that hex without going past it. Alright, we've got all the tires removed. Making sure to put all 6 of these screws off to the side in my tray so I know right where they came from. Looking at the tire width, since we have them off here, yes, it's easy to see that the back tires are wider than the front tires. So once again, when it comes to stretching these WPL tires over top of the stock wheels and tires, nice fit on the front ones. They fit perfect, just about the right width and diameter. Still a nice tight fit on here all the way around. We still need to come in here after the fact and glue our sidewalls down. But on the back, they are much wider. So our fit is just a little bit tighter on the back. Next step, removing our cab off of the vehicle. So we're going to start by removing the air dam off of the front, which is taking out these 2 screws right down here. This guy and this guy. And we'll pull off the air dam. Small Phillips screw with a big built-in washer. Putting those at the very front of my tool tray. So they are coming off of the front of the truck. Removing the air dam, just gently lifting up on it, it does snap in to the upper portion of the body. So just trying to kind of pull this down a little bit to get that separated. There we go. You can see our little notches right along here where that locks into place. Looking at our grill / air dam, we can see our notches across the top here where it locks into the body. Lenses for our headlights intact. At this point in time, when I had the grill off, I took this over to my drum sander and just sanded down those little nubs on the bottom of the air dam area, lower bumper area, grill, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, once you have this removed, it makes it nice and easy for sanding those ridges down to make that flat. Continuing along, removing our cab. Alright, we have 6 screws to remove down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we'll go ahead and get those removed. So right here we have another relatively small screw with a washer built in. And that is the hold down point for our cab, where our cab snaps into the chassis portion. So we're going to set these off to the side over by the air dam screws. Screw coming out of our lower fender, nothing special. Just a regular Phillips screw, no washer built inside, but relatively short. We're going to set that off to the side by the other front bumper screws, or by the other cab screws, I should say. One off the front. Alright, so we have all of our cab screws removed and sitting off to the side. Now the cab is being snapped into place right here. There's a little tang right there. Another little tang right here. And we need to paint those black after we finish up with this project just so it blends in. And there's one more connection point right back here. Another little tang. So it's a little bit easier if you just push in on the back of the cab a little bit, and you can disconnect that one from back here. Same with the driver's side. You can push in on the door to help loosen that up a little bit. But you also might need to come in with a screwdriver and put a little downward pressure on that to help it work it out. Once again, a lot easier off camera to do this process than it is on camera. Make sure you don't set your truck down on your spindles. You don't want to damage your spindles in any way. Trying to get this so you guys can see what's going on here at the same time. Which, once again, makes life difficult for myself. There we go. And we have our cab removed off the truck. Nothing fancy going on in here. Pretty blank. Our little sunroof window kind of snaps into place down here, so you could go in after the fact and just unsnap this and paint that black if you wanted to, which would add a little bit of pizzazz to the truck. Cab has been removed. Front. This is all of our weights sitting over the front end. I wrote front on there with a black Sharpie when I took this apart previously, just so I knew the orientation of this weight block. Once again, we have 4 steel bars in here for extra weight. So we're going to go ahead here and remove that block. But before we do, we're going to unplug all the wires going into the motherboard. No worries about confusion on these wires. They are all color-coded and relatively separate from each other. So absolutely no confusion as to what goes where. Biggest issue right here is just making sure that you unplug these in a safe manner so that you're not ripping the wires out of the plug or ripping the socket off the top of the motherboard. So very gently, gingerly, remove your plugs from the motherboard. Green 2-way, white 2-way, yellow 2-way, black 2-way, blue 4-way, right there, the green 4-way right behind it, right there. We have a blue 2-way on the far side right over yonder here. We're going to get that guy unplugged. Which is a little bit stiff, that's what she said. There we go. Last plug is this white 5-way plug right here. And that is going to your steering servo, I believe. We got all of those guys removed. So our wire is kind of up and out of the way. At this point in time, we're going to go ahead and remove the 4 screws that are holding this block of weight in place. So we'll get all these guys out of there. Making note of the screw size. A little bit longer than the rest. And they do have a small built-in washer around the head of the screw. We're going to put those up in the front with all the rest of the front screws. But just kind of in front of the front screws. Once again, trying to keep them separate from everything else. Now, you don't necessarily need to write front on the front of your weight bar here, but if you wanted to, you could. That way you know the orientation of your motherboard and the orientation of the weights to where they sit on the vehicle. Go ahead and lift our weights off. Make sure not to snag on our wires. And we can see all of those steel bars on the inside of this block. Once again, 4 of those guys. Roughly this size. Right here. So the front's been pretty much stripped down. We're all good to go on that aspect. We're going to start removing the rest of the screws that are attaching the chassis. And that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So you need to remove these guys back here for the taillights as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we'll be able to separate the upper portion from the lower portion on the chassis. Kind of gently set our vehicle down, making sure that our wires aren't getting smushed, making sure that our prop rods, our push rods for the bed are laying flat, so we're not going to damage those as well. We'll start removing all of these guys. Here's one of those screws right there. We're going to set those off into a different spot on our tray so we know where they came from. These are all basically the same size across the bottom of the chassis. Big boom in the background. I don't know if you caught that on camera. Labor Day weekend. Today is Labor Day. There we go. Last screw has been removed and we got that sitting inside the tray. Flip our chassis back around. At this point in time, we can separate the upper portion of the chassis from the lower portion of the chassis. It just lifts off just like that. We'll gently remove that. Fenders coming along with it, which they shouldn't. We should be able to separate that. There we go. There. So there is our rear portion. Front portion was trying to come along with it. The rear portion overlaps the front fenders and that front clip area. Once you have this separated, it gives you good access to come in here with a drum sander and thin all this plastic out on the inside. It was a very slight ridge on this edge. I just sanded this whole thing down with a drum sander right around this edge right here, going past our linkage right there for the tailgate, making sure to thin this out as well, all the way up to the front. There's a couple little plastic nubs that stick up right back here, and we should probably sand those flat as well, just to make sure that we're not getting snagged on anything. Make sure that we remove our front fenders here so I can show you that nonsense. Carefully guiding our wires through so we're not going to lose anything or get snagged on anything or rip anything off. Alright, we've got our front clip removed, giving us nice clean access to the front fenders for sanding away on this stuff. Looking at our accessories that slide onto the chassis, we've got a couple little slots there, a couple little tabs on our accessories. and they just slide down onto the chassis. Just like that on either side. Looking at our gas tank / air tanks, hydraulic tank, reservoir, battery box. These are hollow once again. We're going to come in here with a hot glue gun and some nuts and bolts and just kind of load these down with a little extra weight. Don't want to get too carried away though, because these little plastic tabs are the only thing that are holding these tanks onto the chassis, or these accessories onto the chassis. And the plastic is kind of cheap. So if you get these a little bit too heavy, they might break off. So you got to be careful that we don't load them down too heavy. The reason that we're loading them down with some weight is so that way we can get some weight closer to the back tires. That way when we're empty and we're driving around off-road, we'll be able to negotiate around a little bit better because we have weight closer to the back tires versus having that big block of weight hanging over the front tires. Looking on the inside of the chassis, we've got all our wires for the motors and everything else leading up to the front. I came in with some blue painter's tape and just kind of lined up all my wires and taped them across here. That way when we're reassembling the vehicle, it makes things easier for keeping your wires out of the way so they're not getting smushed by the two chassis halves. Right back here is the motor for the drive axles, right there. That is for the gearbox going to both of our drive axles on the back. And here is our lift mechanism with our little push rods. You can see that they are connected to this plastic wheel right there. That rotates around once again, and when it's in the down position, the box is down, and when it comes back to the upper position, it raises the box back up. While we have the chassis in hand, I do need to come in here and remove our inner fenders. Because right now, with our oversized front tires, when we're turning from left to right, our tires are hitting our inner fenders here. So I'm going to go ahead and chop these guys right on out of here and get them right up and out of the way. I'm basically going to start down here on the corner edge and work my way up with removing this piece of plastic. That way we're not going to sacrifice structural integrity of our chassis. And once again back here, we're just going to follow this line straight on down, right on down this edge and back out. Starting on the removal process of our plastic here, how am I going to do that? Very crudely with a pair of side cutters or wire cutters. And just start taking small bites. Don't want to get too carried away. I'm going to start right down here on the base by our chassis plate. Take a small bite out of that. Plastic does kind of shatter a little bit, so you got to be careful about doing this. That's why I say take small bites on this. I kind of went a little bit big on that first bite. Just because I was trying to demonstrate things to you guys. Not so much about the braking factor, but just about how I'm going about it. It is shattering away there. The reason it's shattering is from the pressure of the jaws coming together. With our wedge on the ends of the jaws, as it's coming together, it's trying to push that plastic apart and causing it to shatter. So I'm making sure to have that wedge portion facing up. That way if it does shatter, hopefully it's just shattering upwards on the parts that we're removing. Carefully break off that piece so we don't break anything else off. There is a fine ridge right here as well on the front side of the fender, so we can basically just follow that ridge right on up. Right on up to the top. I'm going to come back in after the fact with that drum sander and sand this smooth to clean up those edges. I'm just trying to get the bulk of the plastic off of there before I start sanding on it so I don't have to gum up the sander with a bunch of plastic. Pick up your plastic pieces, they are sharp. If you have any animals running around your house, cats or dogs or things like that, you don't want them stepping on that stuff and hurting their paws. Or kids are walking around in bare feet or something, you want to make sure they get that stuff cleaned up so you don't get a plastic sliver somewhere down the line. Trying to get this so you guys can see what's happening, so I can see what's happening at the same time. I'm using a camera flash for light, because the lighting in my workplace is not very good. Well, that one kind of curved inward a little bit, but it's not a big deal because we're going down to this point right here. So no real worries about that. I'm going to clean up those edges with the drum sander at the end of the day here, so we'll be fine. Starting on this end, working our way back down, I'm probably going to start right in here at the top and try to work my way away from our little body mount hole right there. Small bites. Small bites. Little baby bites. Don't want to fracture that body mount. Just want to remove this plastic. It'd probably be better coming in here with a Dremel or a cutoff wheel. Small cutoff wheel to cut this off of here. But I tell you what, my hand is just not that steady to do that. But feel free if you are, and go for it. Right now I'm just kind of chunking it out. Moving back around to the bottom side of the fender. Coming in on the other side of this ridge right down here. If I don't have enough removed, I can come in after the fact with that drum sander and sand this a little bit smoother. That baby is shattering. Across there. Watch your eyes. Starting to shatter, so I'm going to come back in from the top side and kind of work my way back down. Once again, no guarantees on any of this stuff. If you break or damage your truck, that is your responsibility. If I break or damage my truck, that is my responsibility. Nobody told me to do this, though. I'm doing this on my own for the greater good. The greater good. Alright, looking pretty rough around this edge. Looking pretty chunky. So I'm going to have to come in here once again with that drum sander and try to clear this stuff up. It looks pretty gnarly back here. I would need to sand this down kind of smooth and eliminate those chunks. Try to even that out a little bit. Now we're going to go ahead and start repeating the process over on the passenger side and get that stuff trimmed out of the way. We're going to take the stuff out to the drum sander and clean this bit up a little bit and try to smooth things out. Before I do that, I'm going to use a little bit of painter's tape and wrap it around our spindles, just to protect them from the drum sander in case we accidentally make contact with these guys. We don't want to damage our front wheel X's on the spindles. So I'm going to wrap a little bit of tape around these guys, a couple rows around here, try to build this up a little bit. Once again, that way in case we accidentally come into contact with the drum sander, we won't damage them in the process. As far as our bundle of wires is concerned, I'm going to take all our ends and get them all put together like this. And then wrap some of that blue painter tape around this stuff, just to make sure that we don't damage that stuff in the process either. Might want to kind of push these wires off the side when you're doing any kind of grinding and sanding in here. That way you don't get this snagged on anything and rip them out. Do a bit of painter tape. Folding one end over on the tape, that way I have a spot to remove it from. Holding the tape on one piece of finger here. Trying to get all our wire ends somewhat together. No real special way to do this, just kind of wrapping them up. Just make sure that you're going to be able to get it undone again without damaging your wires. Which is one reason that I use painter's tape for a lot of this stuff. It's because it peels off nicely and doesn't generally leave a residue behind. Alright, so we've got our wires bundled up for the most part. Wheel spindles. Same thing on this nonsense. Since I'm using some wide tape here, I'm going to peel it in half. Rip it right down the middle. As carefully as I can. Which is easier said than done. It's easier ripping this down the middle when it's on the roll. Sticking one half to the side of my table. Folding up an end on one end of this. Like so. And then we'll go ahead and start wrapping our spindle up a little bit here. The truck is wanting to fall over, so not so easy. Winding our wheel spindle around, I'm actually just holding the tape and spinning the spindle. Pinching the top every once in a while to make sure that we're covering the whole thing. Just like so. And now that will be somewhat protected in case we accidentally hit it with that sanding drum. Repeat the process on the other side. Again, folding one end of the tape over to give us a little spot to unpeel it at. A little sideways, it's trying to track funny. Want this to lay across here as evenly as possible. That way you're offering as much protection as you possibly can to that wheel hex / spindle. I apologize if the camera's not picking it up, but you guys get the general idea here. And there we go. Close enough. Close enough for my quality. Alright, so we can take our parts that need to be sanded and move on out to a different portion of my garage. Get to the drum sander and start cleaning this stuff up. Once again, I already pretty much did the bulk of the sanding on the upper portion of our chassis here for the rear fenders. But I do need to remove these little nubs right there on either side. So I'll take this back out there and kind of give you a rough idea of what we did with this. The other portion of our cab, the lower portion of our cab, once again, I already came in here with that drum sander and cleaned all this stuff up a little bit. But I do kind of want to round off these corners a little bit more. So I'm going to bring it back out to the sander and touch that up a little bit further on each end. We're going to take our lower front body portion, I guess, out there. We're going to take out our upper chassis plate. And we're going to leave this behind because we already sanded this down already. It's pretty easy. Once again, there's just two little nubs right up here, and just ground those down flat. So I'm going to gather up all this stuff in our camera, and we'll go around back and go to the drill press and start doing some sanding. I'm using a roughly 1.5 inch diameter sanding drum right here, chucked into the drill press. I have a slightly larger one as well, probably 2 inch at least. I don't want to get too carried away. 2 inch might be a little bit too hefty for what we're doing. We'll stick with this one. We're going to start out by removing our little nubs on the inside of the rear fenders. Once again, I already came in here and did all the work that needs to be done. But you pretty much get the idea. You have to come in here and just keep sanding away on this and get that as thin as possible. That way you can accommodate those larger tires. Even right back here around our linkage mount, you need to kind of sand that down as well to thin that out a little bit. You don't want it to go too crazy on that because you need to maintain some kind of strength back there for that linkage. But it does need to be thinned out ever so slightly. One nub removed right down there. Licky split. I've got that little nub removed. I'm just putting a little bit more shape on the back half of our fender right by this mount. Just trying to shave that down a little bit more. Kind of stick it up a little bit right there. Not too bad. It's about as thin as I want to take it. I need to work on the other side. done with our lower chassis portion. I'll set that off to the side. Blow all our plastic debris out of it. Moving on to the lower portion of our cab. Inner fenders down here. Once again, I want to remove a little bit of material down on the lower portions down here. I already took a ton out in this area right here. Just want to take a little bit more on these bottom edges. When it comes to adding shape, it's all in your own personal eyeball. But it can be a difficult process trying to add shape to things like that. Right now I'm kind of looking at this line where these two pieces of plastic come together. This is where our mud flap was hanging down from this outer fender, or inner fender. So I'm kind of try to trim it down somewhat even with that line on either side. So I'm stopping every few minutes to scrape off any buildup. Basically I'm just trying to round these edges just a little bit further and open this up just a tad more. That way we can get the maximum amount of tire clearance that we can out of this. Looking at it from a far angle, just to see that we're staying somewhat symmetrical with our cut there, our grind. I do need to remove a little bit more material off of the driver's side. A little mark here from our little indentation on our fender. This one is not quite as far back compared to the other side. That's one of the more difficult parts when you're reshaping these fenders, is trying to keep it symmetrical from right to left, making sure that they both appear to be even. So you need to use little markers, like little indentations that were already on the fenders, as like stopping points, so you know where to stop at. I think we're all set with this portion. Yeah, I think that's close enough for what we need to do. Got it all trimmed down on either side. Came in on the inside, just kind of rounded these corners off just a little bit on the edge. Just try to smooth this off a little bit right in this area. So our tire wasn't as likely to catch on that. And yeah, that's the end result. I think we're okay on that. Got the upper portion of the chassis, rear fender section. Got both of our little nubs removed on those guys. Once again, sanded this down as thin as possible, trying to get rid of this little ridge right there for the most part. As well as our linkage positioning right back here for the tailgate. That part sticks up a little bit, so it takes a little extra sanding to remove some of that nub off of there. All pretty much smooth across the bottom though, so we're all set on that particular portion. And then looking at our lower cab portion. Trying to make these guys symmetrical from one side to the other. I think we're looking pretty good in that area. Yeah, good enough. Close enough for my quality. Alright, we're back from the other side of the barn. We've got everything all ground down and ready to rock. That glue gun is warming up right now. I'm going to start gluing in some bolts into our side saddle gas tank and air tank, hydraulic tank, blah, 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 this little area there. And get some weight going on these guys. So right now I have 4 3/4 inch bolts inside our gas tank. I'm going to glue those in lightly. And then add another layer and glue those in, and then add another layer and glue those in, and so on and so forth. We'll see what we come up with. I did have 36 3/4 inch bolts out here, and 8 1 inch bolts out here as well. The 1 inch ones, I'm not too sure what I'm going to do with those just yet. I was debating on lifting up our wires and pulling them back out of the way, and just putting a layer across here. A small layer across the inside. Not blocking our slots for the side saddle gas tank and air tank, but, you know, just putting a couple on either side, just to get a little bit extra weight in between the front and rear wheels. So I'm not too sure if I'm going to do that just yet or not. If I do that, I'm going to have to lift our wires up, and then after I get the bolts put in place, I'm going to have to find a piece of foam padding or something to put down on top of them so the wires don't get chafed on top of the bolts. So once again, not too sure if I'm going to do that just yet. Right now, we're just going to start layering up the inside of the gas tanks, or the side saddle accessory tanks, whatever you want to call them, and go from there. Alright, we are all done adding our weights. Bolts added to the air tanks. Bolts added to the gas tank. Big solid block of glue in there for the most part. And then I went ahead and added some inside the chassis as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 down the inside of the chassis. Pretty much ready to put this guy back together, or start putting it back together. Be sure not to damage my wires. Go ahead and hang our accessories back on the vehicle. Hopefully we have enough clearance to get these guys on there. I'm going to have to do a little trimming on them. We'll see how this goes. Alright, air tank's on there. Figure out which is the nice side to put up on our gas tank. Or fuel cell. There we go, we got that guy back on there. That should give us a little bit more weight in between the front and rear axle. Some pieces of foam that I cut down to wedge in between our wires and whatnot and the bolts. Just to kind of keep those guys safe. Keep our wires safe for the most part, trying to keep them from chafing on the bolts. So adding a couple pieces of foam to the inside here. Something like that, a little blanket in there. Might put a piece of tape across it or something to kind of hold that stuff in check. Keep our two pieces of foam together. And our cables back up and over. And back down where they had them ran previously. Trying to put these right back where they had them. Our wires are ran, everything looks good. Start with our lower cab fender section here and get this put back into place. Run all our wires very carefully back up through. Starting with the longest ones. Getting those in there. Excuse me if you can't see what's happening here. Making sure we got all the wires going back up through this little slot. Right up here. Get this back down into position. Just like so. We'll go ahead here and mount our main chassis plate back on, making sure to hold up our push rods for the bed. Guide them back through the hole, the slot. Carefully get this guy put back into place. Making sure that everything is copacetic. Yep, we're looking good. Two halves are pretty much joined right there. We can start running the screws in on the bottom to get this reattached. I'm just going to kind of pinch this together while I do this. That way we don't lose anything. That way none of our stuff starts falling apart on us. Easier said than done. Especially after you add weight to it. Grabbing our however many chassis bolts that we got going on here, 6, 8, can't remember. Have them off in a separate part of the tool tray, or magnetic parts tray. That one seems to be endlessly spinning. I might have to run a new screw down in that one that we just put in, just because it seems to be stripped out. That one's good. This one went in okay. This one is kind of stripped out, so I might have to pull that one out after the fact, or I will pull that one out after the fact. And find a longer screw for that hole. I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere. But that's what she said. Find a longer screw for the hole. These guys are going in okay. Working our way to the back. Excuse the camera angles if you guys can't see what's happening. And 2 more, 1 for each taillight. I'm not holding it at the ideal angle for doing this stuff. I want you guys to be able to see what's happening. I don't even know if the camera's even reaching over this far. Could be off screen for all I know. Alright, we've got all those installed. We install our 2 screws that we're holding our front piece in place. Which are not these guys. They are these guys. 1 and a 2. One. And there's screw number 2. Alright, so I'm going to take this one out. One that was stripped out down here. Hopefully, I can get this guy back out of here. There we go. I need to find a longer one to put in that hole. Alrighty, found a longer screw. Dug into the old Tamiya collection. Found a Tamiya self-tapper. We'll run that guy back in. Hopefully it's not too long. we got a good bite. We're good. Okie dokie. We can peel the tape off of our spindles, wheel hexes, what have you. Get that stuff ready to go. Get off my finger. It's like a booger that you can't flick off your finger, you know, it goes from one finger to the next finger to the next finger. Alright, getting all our wires pulled back and out of the way. We can reinstall our weights. Making sure to run our headlight wires back into their proper slots, which is right down here on either side of the weight location. Left and to the right of the speakers. Get our block of weight, and reinstall that up on the front. Just like so. Reinstall the 4 screws for that block of weight. They all had a small built-in washer on them all. I don't know if we're going to catch that on camera or not, but a small washer on the head of each of one of the screws. Built in. Started with one in the back corner, and I'm going up to the front corner back here. Put another one in the back corner, another one in the front corner, and call it good. Making sure that we have all the right screws that we're using for this particular part. Making sure that we're not cross-threading them on the way in. Making sure not to strip out the holes when we're driving them in. Alright, our block of weight has been reinstalled. We can start plugging in wires now. Going with this blue one, which goes out to our headlights. It's one of the shorter lengths of wire. And we got the blue one, we got the green one. The blue one's a little bit shorter, so we'll get that one plugged in. All good to go there. I think next we'll use this black 2-way plug. Get that plugged in. Back where it goes, black 2-way in the black socket. Yellow 2-way into the yellow socket. What do we got next here? The white 2-way, this is our main power coming in, I believe. This is the one going out to our motors, which is our green 2-way. We'll get that guy plugged in. Try to keep these wires somewhat copacetic, somewhat arranged. Alright, we got that guy installed. Fishing wires around. Try not to tangle anything. Get our green 4-way plugged in, which is right over here by our blue 4-way. Those are for the lights. Might be a 5-way, I'm not sure. No, that's 4. It is a 4-way. We've got a big white 5-way here. We'll get that guy plugged back in. Whatever direction it's supposed to go in. Just like that. We got a blue 2-way and a white 2-way. We'll get our white 2-way plugged in. Right back here in a white slot. And lastly, but not leastly, is our blue 2-way. Alright, we've got all our wires reattached. Try to get these guys pushed down in here somewhat uniformly. But not really, just kind of shoving them in there. Yeah, close enough. Get our cab reinstalled under the truck. Now I should come in and paint the bottom edges of our tab hold downs with some black paint. Just to kind of camouflage those, but I think we're going to do that after the fact. So after we snap them back through our sockets down here, if I did have it painted, that paint would come off. Alright, so our cab has been reinserted. Just need to put our screws in that are holding the cab in, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we'll get those guys reinstalled. Start with the ones with the built-in washer, which go for the cab body mount. Basically kind of a keeper to keep that body from coming unsnapped. Got that guy. Short self-tapper. Spin right in. Another small self-tapper with a washer built in for the body mount hold down. This will be going on the passenger side. Alright, she's back in. Our next little short self-tapper. Going back in this hole back here. Just like so. I just need to put our front clip back on. This guy. We'll start by feeding it right up into here, just like that. And push it back into place, and we just need to run our 2 screws back in. Alright, the screws for our front bumper slash air dam slash whatever. Fat washer built into it. Short screw. Short screw with a fat washer. Go ahead and run those guys back in. Snugly. Don't overdo it. It's just holding that front air dam or grill or whatever in place. It's really not doing anything other than that. I'm actually trying to hold the grill close to the truck while I'm putting this in here. Make sure that's going to stay in there. Alright, we got that all attached. Alright, let's get our bed reinstalled while we're sitting here. Our tipper box. We'll start with our hinge screws on the back. And then work our way up to our push rods. All the same screw. Once again, long shank, a little bit of thread on the end. I need to re-magnetize the screwdriver, I tell you what. She's losing her hold. Alright, one hinge screw in place. Truck has gained some weight. Hopefully that's not going to slow us down off-road. Hoping that's going to be an improvement overall, and not a hindrance. Smooth. Try to get it so you guys can see what's going on. Next screw for one of our lift legs here. And the last one. Alright, we got that reattached. And reattach our faux cylinder on the front here. Not sure which way that was on there. Don't know if it really matters or not. Don't think it does. It seems to fit on this way pretty good. Get the 2 short screws that were holding that in place back in. These guys, once again, are pretty much the same size as all the other chassis screws. Make sure it's going in the center straight. Alright, don't need to over tighten these guys. They're not holding anything, they're not doing anything really, just holding this false cylinder in place. Okay, we got that guy reinstalled. Time for our tailgate linkage. Getting it into position. These guys are notable. They have paint on them to match the body. Really short self-tapper, fat head washer on the end of it. I'm going to try to start this by hand. And switch over to the screwdriver. Alright, we got those guys reattached. So at this point in time, we could put the battery back in it and lower our box back down. That way it's easier to work with the truck. Alright. Well, we got the truck back together again. I say again because I got it all put together on film on camera and then started turning my wheels left to right and was getting a little bit of rub on our inside fender fore and aft. So I had to take it back apart again and do a little bit more trimming in there. A little bit more drastic than we did the first time. Way better. Now, 20-some minutes later. Now that we got our back portion of our front fenders trimmed down enough. Almost flush with the frame down here. Leaving our rear body mount intact. Or chassis mount, whatever. Keeping that crap intact. And just drawing this in as close to the chassis as we can, up here. Trying to put an angle on this corner, right here. That way when our front tires come in, as we turn, you're not going to rub. I think we should be good. At least on this portion. Looking at our main cab, lower cab portion once again. Might come in and just take a little bit of plastic off of these guys. Right here. So I just took a little bit extra out through here. Not too much, just a little bit on our leading edges in this area. Now on our front portion, inside, I need to take some out of here, right off this corner. I don't know if we're going to catch that on camera or not, but right in here. That might be tricky. So it's right in this area right here. Just wanted to round that corner over a little bit. Going from this side to this side. This edge coming around. Just trying to round that off. I think it's going to do it. Took a little bit more off the front half and back half of our outer edge of the fenders, both sides, as well as trying to grind off this edge right here, so it's not so much of a right angle. Tire wasn't really coming into contact right here, but I just wanted to make sure. So took a little extra out. 39 minutes. Probably the 4th time it's done on the sanding wheel here, in total. So I'm going to take the camera off the tripod here and show you what all we removed after the fact. I've got the brightness turned up a little bit on the camera. Coming in here and looking at that inner fender well right here. So pretty much stayed where I was at previously on the video, going back to that open spot on our inner fender well. But as soon as I got past our little body mount screw there, which isn't really a body mount, it's an inner fender to outer fender mount. Really the only body mount here is this screw right here behind our little push-in tab. So this screw and the one on the other side are pretty much the only body mounts screws that there is. The other ones are chassis mounts. Nevertheless, came in by this chassis mount and ground this right on down, almost even with the chassis. So if I peel back this secondary fender, we're pretty much even with the chassis right here. So it took a lot of plastic out of that area. And then same thing on the front. Started back at that upper ridge and came right back on down and kind of ground into this nose area and had to remove quite a bit of plastic out of here because the tire was catching right on this outer edge. Alright, so you see where my finger's at right here. There used to be plastic going between our outer fender and this point right here. That was like all inner fender. So I had to grind all that material out of there and then put a slight angle on this in order to get our tire not to rub on that. Looking at the underside. Alright, so you see this little spot right here? This did come over straight across, like right where the tip of my thumb is. So I removed all that plastic and just started grinding at an angle straight on down to match the angle of our inner fender here. And ground material off of this edge right there, as well as grinding a little bit of material off the side of our outer fender. Between this straight edge here and our curved edge there, right along this seam. Ground some material out of there just to kind of round that over a little bit. So we're not rubbing anywhere at the moment. We are free and clear on both sides. Once again, this pretty much came straight across right where my thumb's at. Started right here and pretty much came straight across to here. I just removed all that material and ground it back on an angle just to give us a little bit more room when the tire is turning in here, like that. It was rubbing on this corner. So now it should be free and clear in that area. Looking at our back inner fenders once again, they were sticking out almost even with these guys. So we started at our body mount and just brought it right on in, right up to the side of the chassis. We pretty much did that on both sides. So we don't have any rub on the back edge of the tire. Hopefully we can see this on the camera. Turn to the right. No rub. Turn to the left. No rub. Passenger tire. No rub turning right. No rub turning left. We're good to go. Alright, slight spoiler alert. Had the vehicle all back together, did it all on video so you guys could see what was happening. Took it out on the adventure course, did that on video as well so you guys could see what the end result was. And came across a couple problems that I thought needed to be addressed. So right off the bat, let's talk about things that I did on camera that you guys haven't seen, or things I did off camera, I should say. I reinstalled our steps back into the vehicle on either side. Countersunk them back into the original step location area and glued them in place. Basically took one step and used my belt sander or drum sander out in the barn there and sanded down this front edge, sanded down the inside edge that's countersunk in, sanded down the back edge until I got it to until I got it down small enough, or shrunk it down small enough that we could countersink it into the original step location here. Originally, once again, it hangs down below. It's part of this whole step dealy deal. It hangs down quite a bit below, and it's basically the same width as this area. So we need to shrink that down quite a bit to get it to countersink in. So I just took one step and sanded down once again this back edge, this front edge, this other back edge until I got to fit in here. I didn't touch the outside edge here. I left that contour the way it was. That way it would follow the body line from our front bumper / grill back to our fender. After I had this one finished, I clamped it with a pair of vice grips to the other step, lining up our back edges right here, making sure that they were lined up, and basically used the one step as a template to grind down the other step so that it would match it. There's the other side right there. Setting in there perfectly. Nice and flat, not hanging down, not snagging on anything. Yeah, we have a little bit of glue frosting on that, but I can probably scrape that off with a flat blade screwdriver, or throw a little dirt on it and you'll never know it's there. So that's one thing that we did off camera that you guys really didn't get a chance to see. The next thing I did was popped out the sunroof and shot it with some black spray paint. Pretty simple to do. Basically just held in by this little plastic tab right here. Just kind of push this tab over to the right and pop the sunroof out. Shoot it with some black spray paint, and pop it back in. Nice touch. Looks much better than the orange sunroof that was there. All the improvements that we'd made were a huge improvement all around. I have to say that right off the bat. Getting rid of all of our little snag points on the bottom, grinding down our little posts hanging down from our front spindles, trimming our fenders down so that they're even with the chassis. Getting all that stuff nice and flat across there helped out tremendously. Adding the extra weight to our side saddle accessories, as well as adding the extra weight to the back, helped out tremendously as well for focusing more weight towards the rear tires. That way we can negotiate around better when it was empty. The larger retread tires on the back with the actual rubber treads, they helped out tremendously as well. But I had two issues. The first issue that I had was the washer that I was using for a spacer on our front wheel hex or our front wheel spindle. You have to use some kind of a spacer on this to get your tire spaced out away from this plastic strut. Otherwise, the tire wants to rub on that strut. So once again, I was using a steel washer on here to get our back spacing away from that strut. Only problem is that there is a lot of slop in our little spindle here. So once you get weight on the vehicle, with the tire on there, with the washer on there, the vehicle sitting on the ground, it starts to rub on the strut again. So I needed to backspace these out a little bit further than what it was sitting at. What I did was I used our stock hubcap or center cap that came off of the wheels. Once again, we have to remove these in the beginning of the video there. That way we can remove the tires from the vehicle. So when you remove these center caps, try not to damage them too much. Try to save them, because you can use them later on down the line for wheel spacers. And these provide the perfect amount of backspacing on the front wheels. No more rubbing issues of any kind. So all good to go. I reused all 6 of these spacers. I have one on each wheel. Got them on the back too. That way our back wheels are backspaced the same as our front wheels and everything is copacetic. So basically just use a 9/64 drill bit. 9/64. Drilled from the back side going towards the front side. Held this with a pair of pliers, put it on a block of wood, chucked in that bit, and then ran it through. Once again, they work out perfect. When mounting these up, what I'm basically doing is taking our little custom-made spacer, dropping it right down inside the wheel hex on the tire itself, making sure to put shiny side down. So the back edge here, the black side, is facing up. The shiny side has a bit of a contour on it, which we're probably not going to pick up on camera, but has a bit of a contour on it. The back side is nice and smooth. Basically, we want the back side, the smooth side, to sit on the wheel hex. So it's going to be nice and flush. So you want to put the shiny side down. No worries about that contoured edge on the inside of the wheel, because the wheel itself has that built-in hex, right? So as long as you have our back edge, the flat edge, facing the wheel hex, shiny side down, curved side in, once you get this all attached, it's nice and straight and it spins true. So no worries. So don't damage those center caps. Try to save them, and then drill them out and reuse them as wheel hex spacers. Best part about using these is that you don't have to go to the hardware store to shop around for washers to space these out. You can just reuse these plastic bits. Alright, the second problem, after I cured our little rubbing issue right there, was that we still have too much weight hanging over the front of the vehicle. Even though we added the extra weight here on our side saddle accessories, still too much weight on the front end. So when the vehicle's empty, it still wants to plow, when we're going through the sand. Hard pack stuff, it's fine. But when you start getting into any kind of loose material, it just wants to plow. Even with our oversized tires, even with having treads on the tires, it still wants to plow. Just too much weight hanging over the front end. So my game plan here is to remove this block and take out 2 of these steel bars and just put them off to the side and reuse them for another project. Take the other remaining 2 steel bars and then move them backwards, back here. So they're sitting on top of the front wheels versus sitting in front of the front wheels. If we look at our chassis, we can see that somebody was already planning on doing that. They've got these U-shaped brackets right here that are built in. So at some point in time, whether it was Huina or Laegendary, someone was planning on putting some steel weights in this area right here. So I plan on taking, once again, removing 2 of the bars out of here completely, getting rid of them, I'm taking our other 2 bars, moving them backwards, which are roughly this size right here. We'll disconnect our circuit board, get our wires pushed down nice and flat, lay a piece of foam across here so it's just to insulate the wires from the bar. Mount the bar in place, and then use a piece of erector set or some hardware cloth or plumber's tape or something to go from across these 2 posts to hold this in place. So that is what we're working on right now. Yes, we have 2 posts here and 2 posts on the other side. So all we need is a little bit of plumber's tape or a little strip of metal or something to go across here to keep these held in place. So hopefully that will clear up our issues. So that's what we're going to do right now, boys and girls. We're going to remove this block of weight real quick, strip out 2 of those bars, throw them off to the side, take our other 2, put them back here, get them remounted, slap everything back together, and see how she works. Alright, so there's our block of weight removed. Try to reroute all our wires here. Get them to come forward nice and flat and flush. Trying to bring everything out in a uniform manner, so basically just separating all these wires, making sure that nothing's going to get snagged on anything else. Make sure none of your wires are kinked up or bound up or anything. Just like so. Keeping them nice and flat. And we're going to find a piece of foam to put in here. That way we can rest steel bars across the top of that without crushing our wires. We got a little bit of neoprene right here, neoprene foam padding. Foam on the back side, a little bit of neoprene or whatever on the front. That'll work out perfect. Put it across here. Need to kind of cut it down to size, roughly. Put the neoprene side down, I guess. Smooth side down, I guess it really doesn't matter. Let's mount that in there just like that. So it keeps our wires nice and protected. Digging in for our steel bars. Well, there's 2. That sucker seems like it's hot glued in there. Tight fit on this last one. That's the little burr on the edge of it that's holding it in place. We need to dig this guy out of here. Wrestling match. Alright, we got it. She has been removed. Nice and light. Alright. Grab 2 bars and try to put them in place. I got some burrs on these guys, some rough edges. Careful when you're removing these that you don't cut your finger on some of these bars. The rough edges, you don't know where these have been. You have no idea where those bars have been. Cutting your finger on one of those would probably be the last thing you want to do. I have to go to the hospital for a tetanus shot. Too sweet after that. These bars might be a little bit too fat to fit in here. Yep, a little bit too fat to get in here, as it is. What do you do about that? Well, we can eliminate 2 bars altogether. And, just leave 2 bars up right here on the front like we had before, but only have 2 on here. But man, that's a lot of weight over the front end. I don't want to do that. We need to get some weight back here in some way, shape, or form. We're really lacking on the room. So what do we do? What do we do? We'll probably heat up these posts with a little micro torch and a pair of pliers and tweak them forward a little bit. And that might give us the access that we need, might give us the extra room that we need. Whatever bars they intended to put in this area are obviously narrower than these. So we could try to shave down some plastic back here. Try to shave down some plastic right here. That'll get us a little bit closer. Ultimately, though, we're probably going to have to heat up this post with a micro torch and grab it with a pair of pliers and try to bend this outward a little bit and see if we can get this into a flatter position. As long as we can still utilize the post and this other post back here along with the 2 corresponding posts on the other side, we might be okay. We just basically need to have some way of holding this in place. Or come up with a smaller bar. It's a nice chunk of weight. I would hate to have to lose one of them, or all 3 of them. We definitely have to get rid of 2 of them for sure. And having them over the front wheels is just not an option. Having it past the front wheels isn't an option in my book, because that's putting the weight too far forward. You need to get the weight back here, if possible. You really can't do away with all the weight altogether, otherwise when you're loaded, you're going to have too much weight on the back end and not enough weight on your steer tires, and you're going to have issues turning. So we need to have some kind of weight on the front, just don't want to go overboard on it. We'll try to shave down this plastic a little bit on either side. Let's see if we can get these to slide backwards a little bit further. We got these little tang right here on this edge. Try to shave that off. Try to shave this off. And see if we can get it to drop in there a little bit tighter. Not fitting our bars. Well, it gets us a little bit closer. Yep, we're going to heat this baby up and put a little bend on it, I believe. Unfortunately, I really don't want to do that, but whatever. Needs to be done. Gotta do what you gotta do. I already see how this is going to go. Badly. It's going to go badly, I can see it already. Yeah, it's getting us a little bit closer to where we need to be. That's doable. We can wrap a strap around here. That's doable like that. That'll work. We'll probably get that to lay down maybe a little bit farther. It's getting pretty mushy. Getting pretty mushy. Plastic debris. Well, we got it somewhat tweaked down. Not too sure if that's going to work or not. We catching it on camera? Kinda. These guys right here. Get a protective layer of foam put back in place. See if we can rough fit our two steel bars back up in here. Up in here. There's one. And there's two. That'll work. That will do the trick. Yes, indeed. That'll do it. Alright, so we got our two steel bars to fit into place. Not the best situation, but they fit. We got them in there. They're not meant to go there, but we got them in there. So now we just need to come up with some hardware cloth or strapping to go across from here to here. Hardware cloth, plumber's tape. Plumber's tape is the word I'm looking for. It's metal banding with a bunch of holes drilled in it every couple inches or whatever. Nice and flexible. Would make it a nice mount for that. I don't think I have any of that laying around. And I don't feel like going to the hardware store, so let's see what else I can come up with here. Alright, so dove into the old erector set, vintage erector set, or mechanical set. This stuff is made in England. Like way back in the day. This belonged to my dad. And we still have a box of this stuff laying around. Put a little bend on these straps, just like that. And they're going to work perfect, just like that, across here. From point to point. Just like so. One going to that hole, another one going to there, so we're all set. Just need some self-tappers with washers on the back. And we should have this held into place perfectly. Hopefully that doesn't interfere with our cab back here. I might have to take some material off the back of these straps, because they might be coming into contact with our cab area. Yes, they are. They most certainly are. Alright, so we got our straps in place. Hopefully we're not zoomed in too close. I need to take some material off the back of these, because we're interrupting with the cab. So I need to take these back off, grind some material off the back, and get them reinstalled. Alright, quick trip to the grinder. Round it over edges a little bit, compared to how they were. So hopefully that gives us enough clearance to get our cab in place. I think we'll be alright. I hope we'll be alright. Suppose we'll find out here in a second. Yep, that'll work. We have our weights mounted, remounted, reconfigured. Pretty ugly, the way we have this fastened in here. But it's secure, it's not going anywhere. And we've got our weights sitting in place. So now I'm running our wires back up this way, around our weights. Trying to keep our light wires separated from everything else. Wires for the LED lights on the front, right here. I'll keep those right where they need to be. Get all these other guys kind of bent up around the steel bar, like so. Yeah, is good. Is good. Alright. Get what's left of our old mount put in place. And now we're hitting on my new straps here. So, currently, pulling our wires back, right here, our new brackets are interrupting with this portion. So, we need to remove some plastic. I'm going to come in here and cut this up and across and over. And maybe we'll leave this mount right here. I don't know if we can actually get that mount in place or not. We might be able to slip that one in there after we're done. Alright, well, we'll do this. We'll come across like this. We'll trim out the front of this gusset here. We'll bring this back down, like that. On either side, kind of. Back down. Bring this up. Just in this area, not here. Not to here. Perhaps. Yeah, so we'll come in here and chop out some plastic. See how she fits. Try and notch her out. We might have to lay another piece of foam in between our wires coming in here and our plastic block. There we go. Alright, we got it. Just like so. She is good to go. Alright, motherboard has been remounted. So we run all our wires, get all this stuff plugged back in. Hopefully we've got enough room to do this. Starting out with the wires that are the tightest fit, which is our yellow wire coming in here. It's probably the tightest one so far. A neat little bend on that to keep it going here, right? Good things and bad things about having this motherboard up so high. Bad thing, it's a tight stretch for our wires at this point in time. Good thing, it keeps the motherboard up away from moisture in case you're splashing through puddles and stuff like that. Gets it up nice and high. But we might have an issue with some wires here. Might have an issue with some wiring, getting some of this stuff plugged in. Just really is a real tight stretch getting back here. Alright, so we've got everything reattached. Our weights are in place, tied down. And we can slap our cab back on the vehicle. Alright, popping the cab back on, finally. Alright, get that snap back in place. Snapping our grill back in place. Alright, she's good there. Laying our truck over sideways. Get our body hold down screws reinstalled. Really the only thing that's really holding the body on are the 3 snap-in points. The screws are just kind of helping to secure it in place. Got sand in my screws after going off-road with it yesterday and testing and what have you. Sand in my threads. One more and it's the body screw on the other side. Cab mount screw. Whatever you want to call it. Alright. Did he just paint those screws black with a Sharpie? Black magic marker? Yes, I did. It works. Easy touch-up. You'll never know the difference from a couple feet away looking through the camera. Looks great from where I'm sitting. Alright, tires. Getting our new wheel hex spacers put in place. Once again, using our center caps off the tires, shiny side down. Dropping in yonder hole. Making sure that we have the shiny side down. I can't see. Yep, shiny side down. Holding the truck up on an angle so we're not going to lose that spacer. Putting our wheel in place. And then run our screw back in. Grabbing our other tire. I think I already have the spacer installed on this one. Yes, I do. Shiny side down. Rolling the truck over slightly so we're not going to lose that spacer. Golden. Testing phase, round 2. Last time we had too much weight over the nose and the truck was still getting stuck. This is an uphill run, all sandy. We're going to load it up with some dirt, run it up this hill into the track entrance, and dump it over yonder away on the course. We already got a couple piles of sand sitting right over there. That's where we were loading up and testing yesterday.
And the truck's doing much better. Try to hold the camera and drive the truck with one hand. It's going to be difficult. This stuff is very fine sand. It's like beach sand. So the fact that we're even getting up this hill is amazing. And we made it through. So yeah, it's definitely doing better. Definitely doing better empty.
Got a big, large yellow grading bucket on the excavator. Nice big scoop of dirt. Excavator has been modded, so we can reach into the back of the truck with no problem. Love having this modded excavator. I do have a video on how to do that as well. If I get a little extra lift out of your 580 or 1593, I've got videos on how to do that. Getting some roots there. Plenty of clearance making it into the back of the truck. I think we got a full load of dirt in there. It looks like it. That's good enough to me.
Plowing through some sticks. Making our way uphill. Over another stick. Sand's a little wet still. We had about 3 or 4 days of rain, so sand is quite wet. Piece of cake. And through the underbrush, running over a bunch of small maple trees. Yeah, we're running over trees with it. Must be doing good. I think it's doing way better. Way better. I mean, this stuff is sandy. Like beach sand.
Well, we got ourselves a tree root. Excavator weighs right around 19.5 pounds right now. So when we're dragging, that's 19.5 pounds roughly of pressure that we're using on the excavator. Yeah, I was gonna set it down, but I don't want to block the view.
We're navigating the sand. Tree roots exposed. This is all uphill. All loose sand. Big tree roots. Get into this gnarly washout area. Oh, that is a gnarly washout. We're running out of power, but the truck is making it. Oh, she's running out of power. Pretty steep hill that we're trying to climb up right there for this little truck, that is for sure. Definitely not lacking on traction or off-road clearance. And we're stuck on a rock. Big rock. That's what we just got stuck on. So no complaints about that. It's a hefty rock for this little truck. And we get stuck on a tree root. Another rock, and another rock. Really, the fact that we're making it up this hill is something to be said, just in that alone. Another hefty tree root. Another tree root. Yes, we are loaded. But if we had those street slicks on here, we wouldn't be making it up this hill, I can tell you that. Wouldn't be driving over these sticks. Definitely doing better. You can see the front end come up a little bit there. That's from shifting our weight backwards, eh? It is successful. Off-road tipper truck. Heading back uphill again, heading out of here. And now we're heading back downhill. And there we go, successful test. The vehicle is working out much better than it did previously. So that is going to do it, boys and girls. Very much appreciated for you all sticking around and watching the video. As always, questions and comments are always welcome. And we will see you all on the next one. Thanks again.